everyone! Welcome to another virtual event with Mysterious Galaxy. Tonight I am joined by two wonderful authors. They're all wonderful, but tonight they're especially wonderful because we are celebrating the release of The Last Fallen Realm. Graci Kim, hello!
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming.
And joining in conversation we have Elle. Hi, Jay!
Hi, thank you for having me.
Of course, hello chat, hello! For those who may be tuning in for the first time, for Graci Kim or JL, Graci Kim writes about magic she wants to see in the world. Inspired by Korean mythology, her Gifted Clans trilogy for middle grade readers was featured in Time magazine for kids, dubbed a sparkling yarn. That's interesting. One, Sparkling Yarn by Entertainment Weekly, and named Barnes & Noble Young Reader Pick, among other honors. It has been optioned by the Disney Channel for a television series and is being translated into multiple languages. Ooh. JL is the New York Times bestselling author of young adult and middle grade fantasy fiction and a 2022 NAACP Award nominee for Outstanding Literary Work for Youth and Teens. That is a great and long title, I must say. The former educator credits her nomadic lifestyle and humble inner city beginnings as inspiration for her novels. Today, like I mentioned, we're here for Graci's The Last Fallen Realm, the third and final book, right, in the trilogy, in the series. So, thus, their trilogy, yes. So, for everyone who has not yet purchased their copy, you'll notice if you're watching this live, there's a link below that says Buy The Last Fallen Realm and get a signed book plate and swag. The swag I'm mentioning is signed book plate, a signed bookmark. You just signed both. I love it. And a nice acrylic pin. Can you everyone see that? It's not focusing. There we go. Okay, that's good enough. So if everyone would like to get one of those or all three of those items, make sure you get your own copy while supplies last. And of course, in the same link, you should support Jay and get all of her books too. Now, every one of them. Don't forget, if you would like to ask any questions of these two authors, there is an Ask a Question button below that looks like some of you already found it. Very smart. Good. We have a good crew tonight. We have a good cast of watchers tonight. And I will see everyone later in the program. But until then, enjoy. Bye.
Bye. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you, Nick.
Before we get started, can I just say, Jess, who I love and adore. So I was holding up some of Jess's books. So Wings of Ebony was your debut YA duology, and of course, Taste of Magic is the first of your middle grade contemporary fantasy series. Love this for anyone who loves middle grade. Obviously, if you're here, I'm guessing you're into it. Magical, especially cooking magic, strong family bonds, a hero who believes in herself. Get this, but also I actually specifically wanted to say, so JL has written the prequel.
We were not going through the whole hour talking about
this. Okay. Yeah, we are. This is why I wanted to get this over and done with in case you did not give me that chance. Okay, so JL has written the prequel. Okay, it's a tie-in, but it's a prequel to The Little Mermaid, the new one with Halle Bailey, right? Yeah.
Yep.
And it is amazing. It's YA, just in case anyone's wondering. So it's not middle grade, it's YA. She's 16, right? I remember you drafting this actually. Oh, 15.
She's 15, but the sensibilities are like upper middle grade too. Like it's good crossover.
Got it. And it's been on the New York Times bestseller list for like 2 months and counting. So I just wanted to put a plug in, not that she needs the plug, but just to scream about how much this friend of mine is amazing and that you should definitely read all of her books.
You are so sweet. Thank you so much, my dear Graci. First of all, can I just say this is super, super exciting to me because we have been friends for a very long time, like before we had book agents, and we've never done a book together, which is like wild, right? So I was really, really honored that you asked me to do this with you. I'm so excited because it is the third book. It's sort of like the end of a trilogy, is like the end of an era, and so I'm so excited to talk about it. I love these books so much. They are highly fought over in my house. I have 3 middle grade readers that I live with, and it is an important property in my house. So I'm excited to dig in. Quick reminder, a couple of things. We are going to do a giveaway, so make sure you stick around till the end. And Graci, if I can harass you into reading a little bit later, we can get to actually hear Graci read some of the books. So giveaway, a reading, make sure you stick around. All right, so let's start. For anyone who just kind of stumbled into this room and has no idea what we're doing, can you tell us a little bit about the series?
Absolutely. Okay. So the first book, I've just realized I haven't even brought the other two with me. I've just got the last one. But The Last Fallen Star is the first book in the Gifted Clans trilogy. And it basically follows a girl called Riley O, who desperately wants to become a healing witch because her sister is one, her parents are one from her community, except she was adopted into the family and she does not have magic in her bloodline. So begins the journey of Riley O and Hattie trying to find magic, and her sister finds a spell, right? That would allow her to share her magic with her sister. And because they love each other, they do it. But as is wont to do in any good story, things go terribly wrong because it's dangerous and it's forbidden. And when Hattie's life ends up hanging in the balance, Riley has to go on the search for the last fallen star or risk losing her sister forever. So that is the first book. Lots conspire in the book. And then in the second book, Riley O, is trying to fix the wrongs of the first book, essentially. She's trying to put right what she did wrong. But then in doing so, more boxes are opened, as is wont to happen. And then the final book, The Last Fallen Realm, is I was just going to say I would give you a whole lot of spoilers, but I guess I shouldn't do that in case you haven't read it yet. So it is essentially Riley O and her family and friends coming up against the Korean goddesses and the big showdown. And who's going to win? Is the world going to be around still at the end of the book? You will have to read the book and see.
I cannot wait. I admittedly decided to wait and read until after we talked about this because I don't like to be interrupted when I'm reading and I have to like hide it from my children. So I am so excited to see what you did. I do think that last books in series have a special place in my heart because it's sort of like closure and completeness. And then like you can read the whole thing from start to finish without the big waits in between. So tell me a little bit about that. Like what was it like to say goodbye to these characters? That have been such a big part of your life. You can also tell us a little bit about how long you've been working on these characters.
Yeah, so it's really interesting, the book world, isn't it? Like the first book that usually gets published, you've been working on sometimes for years because you do so many rewrites because it's usually not usually, but sometimes the book that you've had to revise and revise to get an agent and to seek publication. So the first book took, I would say, some years. And then the second and third books, because of deadlines, had to happen much quicker, in the period of like the first drafts in 3 or 4 months. So that's been a really different experience. But I have to say, I even included this in the author's note. But this book, the last one, was hard to write. It was really hard to write. And it's funny because I'm a plotter. And so I kind of knew what the key things that were going to happen in the book were, and I like it that way. But it was kind of, I think, like I'd grown to love these characters. I mean, it sounds weird, right, Jess? Because we create these characters and worlds that are like not real. They're imaginary in our minds, but by externalizing them and putting them on the page, they become real. And so I became quite fond of a lot of the cast. And this was really sad to say bye. Like, oh. And sometimes now I, will be working on something else or I'll be playing with my little kid and I'll just be like, oh, I wonder what so-and-so is doing right now. Like, I wonder what they would be thinking right now, or I wonder what they would do in this situation. So it's been really, I guess the word would be bittersweet, because I think it's lovely to package up a story in entirety. I think there's something really beautiful in that. But yeah, it's also really sad.
It is. I mean, and would you ever revisit it? Like, do you have other ideas in the universe?
That's a really interesting question. I've never really thought about it because when the story came to me, it came to me in a 3-book structure. And I didn't know all the details, but I kind of just knew how it was going to kind of round itself off. In saying that, perhaps, I mean, this is just future thinking because there's no current plans around it. But I mean, I think there could be, but perhaps not in the voice of the current main character, Riley O, but perhaps like a spin-off with somebody else, because the world that ends up at the end of The Last Fallen Realm is very different from the world that we discover at the beginning of The Last Fallen Star. So could be, you never know. Yeah.
I'm so excited. I'm loving the chat. There was so many fans of the series and like loving and like not wanting it to be over. So just a quick reminder, if you have questions, make sure you put them in the chat, the little ask a question box. We're going to get to that at the end. And a reminder, Gracie is going to read an excerpt from the book and we're going to do a giveaway. So stay tuned. Okay, so I'd love to talk about Riley O, who I am obsessed with. I fell in love with Riley. I believe did I read this before it sold? I might have read it as a manuscript, right?
You did,
I
yeah.
love Riley like with my entire heart. She's the best. So could you tell me a little bit when you were creating a character and specifically the person to be at the center of this world, why or what was your approach to making her so compelling?
You know, I don't ever think I asked myself that question. I think I was just trying to create, to be completely honest, I think I was channeling a lot of me. You know, I channeled a lot of my love of my sisters, my own desire for magic. Wouldn't that be so cool if we could just do a spell and get magic? I don't think there was ever any like intentional way of trying to make her compelling by doing this or not doing this. I think I drew from myself and then a lot of other people that I know. You know, in the third book, this is not a spoiler, but she deals a lot with imposter syndrome. I've heard recently people say that actually it shouldn't be called a syndrome at all. It should be called imposter phenomenon because that's the original term that was used, actually. It's not an illness, it's just a phenomenon. But I have to say, I think it really very much mirrored what I was going through. You know, you write your first book and your biggest goal in life is to get it published. And then when it happens, you're like, okay, so this is happening. And then you have your second book and you're like, okay, that was really tough, but there's a second book. And then you get to the third book and you're like, wait, why am I here? Like, should I be here? Am I good enough to be here? It's like a very weird feeling. And I think lots of people go through it, right? And so I think while writing books should never be a replacement for therapy, I think it was almost a little bit of self-therapy, exploring some of these questions and doubts and the pressure that I was feeling through my character, which happened to feel quite parallel and mirrored my own experience. So yeah, Riley, I think, I don't know if she is compelling, but I try to make her as real as you and me. I'm curious, in your characters, do you ever draw from your own experience or do they kind of come more formed for you as like separate individuals?
Oh, well, first I was going to say she's very compelling, first of all, and you do deserve to be here. Full stop. And yes, so I do think pieces of myself leak into my characters, not even on purpose. I mean, I don't think I've ever consciously chose to do that. They just kind of, because you know, you write what you know. You write like where your instincts lead you, which, you know, and then you end up putting characters in situations and you're like, how would they get out of that? And then you start, you know, envisioning yourself in those situations. And next thing you know, they handle trauma the way you do. They handle heartbreak the way you do. Yeah, it happens all the time. I see pieces of myself and friends and family in all my books.
Yeah. Do you have that thing where like when you're drafting or when you're revising, what you're doing in real life somehow seeps in, kind of like Inception styles? Isn't it so funny? Like you almost,
it's so
if you have a good memory. Yeah. You can chart back.
Yes, that happened in the Little Mermaid book that you mentioned.
Did it?
Oh, completely. Look at the dedication. But is that what happened with you in this series?
I think there were moments. I was just trying to remember the other day because I have such a terrible memory and I forget once things have happened. But I'm just looking at the contents page. Like there's this whole thing around my gummy and M&Ms that feature in this story. And honestly, I'm pretty sure it only really happened because I was eating them a lot at the time when I was outlining. I was like, oh, these are really good. Maybe they could feature in the story somehow. And then they became like a huge part of the story. And something else. I mean, just even the whole idea of, so the third book is set in Vegas, by the way, and the whole idea of it being set in Vegas was because of something I think I saw a documentary or something about Vegas, and then I was thinking about our family trip to Vegas some years back, and I was like, ooh, Vegas would be a good place to set a showdown between humans and goddesses. So it's funny how things, get sucked in.
I love that. I love that so much. I also, so one of the other things, speaking of pieces of ourselves getting sucked in, one of the first things that I related to Riley with in book one is just how she feels different. And I wondered if that was something that came from you innately, or were you writing outside of your own experience, or did you connect with that element of your story personally?
Yeah. So I don't know if a lot of people that are here may have heard me say this already, but maybe the best way of answering that question is kind of starting at the beginning of how I got started writing. So the way I got started writing is I loved books as a kid. I absolutely adored books as a kid. And books really were for me as much a happy place as it was a safe place, because when I was growing up and I first went to school, I was the only Korean kid around and I was really bullied for it. And I have memories of kids spitting on me and spitting in my lunch, and throwing stones at me and chasing me home. It was like a rough period. And so books were always a huge place of happiness and joy and escape for me. And then fast forward lots of time, I was working before being a writer as a diplomat, as you know, and I was posted at the New Zealand embassy in Beijing, and I was working there. I remember one day turning up to work and not being able to read my emails. And I was like, this is very weird. I can't see well, but I wear contact lenses, so I assume I need a new prescription. And so I go get my eyes checked, only for the ophthalmologist to send me to a bigger hospital, and then for the eye surgeon there to essentially sit me down and say, look, Gracie, if you don't get emergency surgery within the next 24 to 72 hours, you'll be blind. And so I was, a bit shook. And I remember going home that night and putting on my bedroom mirror, you can take my eyes, but you can't take my smile. Because I had really learned from these books that I'd read that heroes don't give up. And I really wanted to be the hero of my own story. And I was like, I'm not going to let this stop me. And so I had the surgery. And for months and months afterwards in the recovery process, I had both eyes covered, hoping that my eyesight would recover. It partially recovered. And during this time, I couldn't do anything, right? I couldn't read, I couldn't watch things, I couldn't do anything. And so I thought a lot. And one of the things I had remembered, I said before, I have a terrible memory, and this memory just popped into my head of being at school and writing an assignment at primary school about my family. And I was very proud of this piece of writing, but my teacher pulled me aside and she asked me why I had described my family as being blonde and blue-eyed. And I know you know what I'm talking about. I just didn't know, because I hadn't seen it, despite having been a bookworm. Because I didn't see myself on the page in the books that I'd read, I assumed it was a rule that regardless of who you are in real life, in books you had to be white. Like, I just thought it was a rule. And so my teacher said, if it doesn't exist, it just means someone hasn't made it yet. And at the time, it didn't register. But during this time of darkness for me, it really rang true. And I wanted to live my life with a bit more meaning and intention. And so that's why I had started writing. And now I've completely forgot what you asked me as a question. What was the question again?
You were trying to rely on my memory, which is terrible. No, it was about if you felt different and if that bleeds into your stories.
Right. So of course, when I decided I wanted to start writing, one of the things was I wanted to capture this very universal desire to belong. Because I think regardless, my experience I've just shared, that's why I wanted to belong, because I thought that somehow by virtue of being Korean, by being Asian, I was somehow lesser or other, and I had to prove myself to fit in, But for people from all walks of life, of all backgrounds, people feel this way a lot. It's a human feeling to want to belong. And it meant a lot to me. It was something I really wanted to put in my character, because they say that in all stories, it fits into, no matter the story, it fits into 10 universal stories, of which one is this seeking or desire to belong. And so, it really did pull from that desire and that experience I went through, but not so much my lived experience specifically.
No, that's really insightful. And just, I was just reading the chat as you were talking. I'm so just grateful. As I'm listening to you, I'm thinking of my own middle grade readers who live in my house. And
Yeah.
like one of them is very introverted and books are her safe space. And so I was just listening to you and thinking about how wonderful it is that we have opportunities to give kids books like yours.
Mhm.
I wish I would have had your book when I was little.
Thank you, Jess. And I think it's really important to remember also that there's two things, because for me, I mean, the genesis of why I started to write was this idea of books being a mirror, right? That we should be able to see ourselves reflected back on the page because we all deserve to be the heroes of our own stories. That's one part of it. But there's also a whole other part, which is that books should just be fun and entertaining and full of magic and adventure. And anyone, right? Anyone from any walk of life should be able to pick up a book and be completely transported into someone else's shoes and learn that perhaps what unites us is much greater than what separates us, because we're all human. So yeah, I think it's important to remember that books aren't just about seeing our own selves reflected, because otherwise we wouldn't be stretching ourselves and learning empathy and experiencing so much fun out there.
Yes, I mean, I write magic books, so I want to see myself, but I want to see myself doing spells and riding unicorns. Speaking of which,
Yeah.
shifting gears a little bit. So why fantasy? Why fantasy instead of contemporary? And I would love to hear a little bit I mean, your world building is so imaginative, Gracie. Your mind, it just dazzles me. I am so impressed with yummy candies and moon bunnies. Like, where does this brilliance come from?
um, you know, I don't know what. I don't know where it comes from. I think, to be completely honest, I feel like my brain got stuck at some point in my early teens, and I just never lost that awe and wonder of the world. Does that make sense? I used to do this thing when I can't remember where I was. I was either living in Beijing or Taipei at the time with my old job, but I used to have, before videos were a thing, in terms of like social media videos were a thing, I did this thing called 365 Days of Delight, where every day I would create a little short clip video of me. It's like a vlog, essentially, of something that I found delightful that day. And usually it was something really silly, like, I don't know, like something like a street stall. I found a funny food that I really enjoyed on the side of the street in China, or just seeing like a leaf falling in the breeze and it just like looking like a ballerina doing a pirouette or what have you. And just like the feeling of, in Beijing, in the winter, it would get very, very dry. And so we had this cat that we had adopted called Soot, this black, gorgeous cat. And I couldn't pet her in the winter because every time I would pet her, the static would like make her hair just poof out. And then, I'm not even kidding, little blue sparks would be created between my hand and the cat. And it's funny, you mentioned just before we started recording, Jael was putting hand cream on her hands. And I was like, I had to do that just to be able to open doors and like pet the cat without being electrocuted. Again, I've totally forgotten what the question was. Oh, right, fantasy. Okay. So I think I've never lost that love of imagining so much magic and beauty in our everyday lives, because it's there. It never went away. We just stopped seeing it. I don't know. Well, not all of us, you know. So I think that's why I was drawn to fantasy. Although it's interesting to note, the first ever manuscript I did write when I first started writing in May 2017 was YA, and it was contemporary. So I don't think I knew that until I had discovered fantasy again. But the other thing I was going to say, oh, right. As you can see, I don't remember anything, and my mind is completely all over the place. I'm so restless, easily distracted. I forget everything. And now I'm like lost my train of thought. But right. And that is the other reason I think I write this type of relatively fast-paced action, fun, fantastical worlds, because I get easily bored and I get easily distracted. So I'm pulling from all different parts of my life things I've read, people I've met, my kid and what she's playing with at the day, on the time. All these things come together and they just swirl around in my head in a weird way. And I think that's what happened. But honestly, it's hard to be in here sometimes.
Well, we are the lucky ones because we get to benefit from all the things swirling around in your head. And I saw in the chat, someone said the cat was a Pokemon. So I just wanted to, to bring that up.
That is, yeah.
One more reminder, if you have questions, drop them in the Ask a Question box. We are going to get to the reading in just a second, and then we'll do the giveaway after that. Beforehand, though, I would like to ask just one or two more questions. I'd love to kind of talk more about your writing process, because we've talked a little about the world building and like why you wrote, but like, I mean, I know this because we're friends, but everybody else may not know. Tell me about your writing process. I know you're a plotter. So give me an idea of what it was like. Did you do a lot of rewrites on this book? Did it start in one direction and you're like, nope, and you had to start all over? Just take us through what it was like.
So not just this book, but it seems everything I write. I spend a lot of time just with a big A3 piece of paper, well, many A3 pieces of paper with lots of different colored pens or felt tips, and I just do a brain dump, because as you can probably gather, my brain is all over the place and I can't organize it in my head when I have a blank like Word document or anything like that. So I just have to spew it all down visually. Lots of flow charts, lots of arrows and clouds and things. And once I do that, like you mentioned, I plot. So I try to outline, and that's really to keep me on track, because otherwise my brain goes everywhere and I can't focus. And then I find, as I did with this book, the first draft, even when I have a plan and I know what's happening, it is one of the most painful things ever. Apart from maybe childbirth, which nobody really wants to go into here about, but it's so painful. I just can't seem to make that any less painful, and it's slow, and I require lots of time. So I know some writers can just write for 15 minutes at a time and just get back into it. But for me, it takes, honestly, some hours just to get into the headspace in front of my laptop. And then I get into the zone. And then by that time, I have to go pick up my kid or something. So, the flow is broken. So it's really hard for me. I love revisions. So revisions to me feels like play, because how I usually describe this is that drafting to me feels like I'm shoveling. Like there is sand and I've got a spade and I'm sweating into my eyeballs and I'm like just shoveling that sand into a pit, and it's just hell, right? And then once I've done that, the revision part is just me being in the sand pit, making castles and making them look pretty and trying to do it this way, trying to add like turrets and like moats and drawbridges, and that part is just fun. Like that, I can do revisions till the cows come home, but I have to go through the shoveling process so I have the sand. And I wish it was less painful. Is it? I mean, you're such a fast drafter. It's one thing that I'm so amazed about, like your ability to just be on, and then you just like, from where I sit anyway, it seems like you just get it out. How is it for you?
It's evolved a lot. You're also, as you were talking about the shoveling and the painfuls, like, yeah, I'm literally drafting book 2 in my trilogy as we speak. So it's a uniquely interesting, task. So no, my process has evolved a lot. And I find that the bigger the world, the slower I go. It just requires more sand, to borrow your analogy, And so anyway, but I think was each book in your trilogy, was it different, or did you feel like it was sort of like formulaic? Like, okay, I've done the flow charts, I've written the first draft, and now it's, was any one uniquely more difficult than another?
So I think they were pretty much all aligned in that the first draft was painful and then the revisions were more enjoyable. But I have to say, the second book was the easiest to write. That flowed a lot easier. And then the third book, like I said before, was the one I struggled with the most.
Right. I'm looking forward to the, no, just kidding. Yeah, book 2 is kicking my behind. Well, no, that's really interesting. I love hearing about writers' processes, especially because I feel like processes grow and change as our writing grows and changes. So anyway, also I meant to say earlier, I will be waiting on that YA contemporary novel in my inbox whenever you're ready to send it, please.
Oh my god, Jess, you'll never see that. You'll never see the light. Oh my god, that will never see anyone.
My first, I had a friend over and we pulled out our first drafts of things we wrote, and we read a chapter out loud, and we probably laughed crying for an hour. It was just like, it was good though. It was like, wow, there's potential here, even though it's a mess. Okay, so my last question before we jump into having you read is, do you feel like you have sort of found your home in middle grade? Because it sounds like you were kind of playing around in YA and then doing doing some trilogy work with Disney. So I'm curious to know, like, where you feel like your heart is aligning.
Yeah. Hey, that's a good question. I want to write forever. And so I hope that in the future, I would be able to write lots and lots of different things and lots of different styles and genres and age categories. In saying that, for now, I'm so happy here. I fell here by accident. Like I said, I started off in YA, I started off in contemporary, and middle grade was a complete accident only because the editor in question at the time suggested I age my manuscript down. And so I didn't mean to be here, but I love it because my brain is like made for this world, as we've discussed. So I love it. I obviously, well, not obviously, but for those that know, the publishing industry is kind of slow. So I can't talk about what comes after this in detail. And I'm pretty sure my editor is here. So probably not. But can I very quickly, before we do the reading, give a hint about what I'm working on next, which is Orphan and
Please. I was planning to ask. I wasn't sure how much you could say.
Okay, cool. So without going into any detail, because I can't, I'll just talk about the 4 kind of threads that inspired this world and story. Okay, so first is funny, somebody mentioned about the cat being a Pokemon, because Pokemon was one of the things. I love Pokemon and the idea of, catching creatures, that whole idea. So Pokemon was one of the inspirations. The other one was X-Men. I love the X-Men and the idea of a subset of the human population that is genetically mutated to be different, which allows them to do things that are extraordinary, and how society views these people, and the struggles and the kind of conflict between these 2 groups of humans, essentially. I love this idea. So there's a bit of that. The third thing is, so Korea used to have a royal family. And when the Japanese occupation happened, they got decimated. So this idea of, if there was a Korean royal family today, what would they look like? Would they hold a certain kind of stature in pop culture in the way that, the British royal family and the princes have there? What would a Korean prince look like? So that was the third one. And then the fourth kind of element that fed into it is dreams and dreaming. So I find dreams endlessly fascinating. Koreans are very, very superstitious about dreams, which may have stemmed it as well. But this idea that we sleep for a third of our lives. So that means by the time we're 90, we have spent 3 decades, 30 years we have spent in bed with our eyes closed, unconscious. And, scientists explain why this is so, why it's important. But what if there was more to it? Like, what if we went and your sleep was a real place, what would that look like? So anyway, those are the kind of 4 elements that swirled around with many other random things that is what I'm working on next. Yeah.
And do we get to know, this is middle grade, I assume?
Yes.
And is it also a trilogy? Can I ask that?
I don't know at this stage.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, I am so excited and also ecstatic that I get to read whatever you write first, because we're friends. Okay, so could you please read the prologue of Realm for us? And then after that, why don't we dip into our Q&A and giveaway?
I love it. Okay, so I thought it would be fun for those, some of you may have read this already, for whom I'm sorry, but the prologue to The Last Fallen Realm is a short little bit, and it gives a little bit of detail about what the childhoods of the Korean goddesses might have looked like. So it's written in the voice of Magohoni, as we all know, is the mother of all creation. Okay. They say being a mother is the most challenging job in the world. You love your children more than life itself. But to be a good mother, sometimes you have to sit back and do the hard thing, that is to say, do nothing. At times, you must endure in silence as they commit grave mistakes, hoping they learn from their actions, hoping you have instilled in them sufficient humility to see them through, hoping they will do better next time, if there is a next time. It may be difficult to believe, but my 6 divine children were once young too, innocent, ignorant, and unadulterated by the ravages of time. Ah, indeed. Those were, as they say, the good days of old. My eldest, Kum, born of the cave bear, a dutiful girl. She used to spend her days outside, tending to injured birds with broken wings, long until the sun disappeared over the horizon and her stomach ached for nourishment. Service and sacrifice came as naturally to her as her ability to mend flesh and bone. My second, Horangi, born of the mountain tiger, a studious girl. She would spend her days inside reading, devouring words like they were morning dewdrops after a drought, shedding light on the darkest crevices of the mind. Knowledge and truth was her sustenance, of which she never tired of consuming. If you can tell, there are correlations between the gifted clan mottos. It was just Kom and Horangi for some years, blissful in their respective quests for mastery. A quiet life, but peaceful and filled with purpose, until the triplets arrived, bringing with them a cocktail of chaos and renaissance. The first of the triplets, Samjogo, born of the 3-legged crow, a commanding girl. She was proficient in the art of authority, leading our busy household with precision and efficiency, despite the persistent pleas of her sisters for leniency, for she saw wisdom in such leadership and took pride in her role as such. The second of the triplets, Kumiho, born of the 9-tailed fox, a beautiful girl. Many an hour she would spend preening herself in the mirror, reigning dominion over the washroom. But one must not underestimate the power of beauty, for it can also wield influence, and of this she was very accomplished. The last of the triplets, Toki, born of the moon rabbit, a skillful girl. No one dared challenge her in the domain of the scullery, where she experimented and perfected divine morsels for our consumptive enjoyment. With her quiet heart, she was marked by obedience, a trait that guaranteed adoration by her older sisters. The triplets, they did all things as one body, led by Samjogo at their helm. But as they grew, the trio began to outsmart their older 2 siblings with their fast wits and quick strategies. A formidable team they made, leaving Kom and Horangi in the dust, scratching their heads. But there was one thing that all 5 sisters underestimated. One goddess in particular, their youngest sibling, Miru, born of the water dragon, a special girl. Unlike the others in many ways, but especially so in her disinterest of her older sister's games of strategy and competition. Always at my side, she desired nothing more than to help provide and protect our family. With her emotions as voluptuous as the falling rains, she dreamed of nothing more than to be like me, a mother. Sometimes I look back and wonder if I could have done things differently, or perhaps I would do it exactly as I did. One cannot be sure. However, there is one thing I do know. They were right. Being a mother is the most challenging job there is, and I would know. After all, I created the world.
That is absolutely brilliant. Oh my goodness.
Yes.
I just
little
know
bit more
everyone in the chat is
intel.
like clapping. Wow, just so immersed. Now I need a whole short story collection about each one. So there's plenty more we could do in this world. I'll just be waiting. My inbox is ready. Why don't we, should we do our giveaway first? No, let's do the giveaway at the end. Any questions you want to do?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't mind. Yeah.
Just so we can make sure we get to the questions. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so the first question is, you have mentioned you were working on a new series. Are there going to be, I think the question is, are there going to be characters in the current series making cameos in the new series?
Oh, that has not even crossed my mind, but I'll mull it over. We'll see.
Isn't that fun? A fun idea.
Very fun idea.
This person also says, I love these characters so much.
Oh, thank you so much.
Athena is who asked. Okay, so the next question is, and you can still add questions to the chat if you have more. What was the inspiration behind the goddesses and the clan colors? And this one is asked.
Oh, hi, Zuri. The inspiration between the clans. Okay, so unlike Greek mythology or Roman mythology, there's no like existing pantheon of gods or goddesses in Korean mythology and folklore. There's lots of different characters, so many diverse characters, but not kind of an accepted or mainstream pantheon. So I just made it up myself, drawing from ones that I loved and that was strong in lots of different parts of Korean mythology. Because, for example, like Jeju Island, which is off the main island of South Korea, has very rich mythology that is very providential to them. And so I was just trying to draw from lots of different mythologies that were pretty united across South Korea. Or actually not just South, just Korea in general. And then the colors, I just went through lots of iterations. If you saw some of my A3 pieces of paper, it's everywhere. There was like, at one point there were way more colors, at one point there were less, at one point they were different colors. Honestly, my brain is weird. So yeah, honestly, just by chance, probably.
That's so cool. I love that you just like were inspired by the world and just the lore that was out there and decided to just add to it and make your own. I love that so much. Okay, so what are the origins of a nine-tailed fox? I see it in different mythologies. This is Athena again.
Yeah, hi, Athena. It is fascinating to me that despite these mythologies and folklores being from different cultures and places, there is so much that unites different characters and storylines and lessons and learnings across all cultures. We just have a different name for it, or the stories are slightly different. But I truly think, from my research anyway, there is more that unites the different stories than there are that separates the stories. Like the Tree of Life, which features in the last book, that again is something you see in so many different mythologies. And even this nine-tailed fox, a lot of, especially East Asian mythologies, have a version of the nine-tailed fox. So yeah, it's just, who knows where the stories like originated. I think with so many of these stories, they were orally passed down. And I think with mythology, the beauty is that with every storyteller, they get modernized and they get changed and developed to match the times. And that's how stories grow and live and thrive. That is how it works. And so I take great pride in the fact that I'm just one of generations of storytellers who are putting our own spin on these old stories, keeping them alive, because we need to tell them and we need to share them in order for them to continue to live.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that. Okay, let's see. Okay, which side character do you connect to most and why? This is from Victoria.
Okay, so I love side characters. I think side characters make a story. Side characters are so much fun to write as well. So one of my favorite side characters is Dao. If you have read the second book, you will know Dao. I just love his lack of shame. He is who he is. He wears it on his sleeve. He's proud and he's kind of goofy, and he's everything I wish I could be. So I love that. I'm a very internal person. I think a lot. I overthink a lot. So this kind of idea of a person who can just be in the world and just have no, there's a better word than shame, but he's just unabashedly himself, and I just love that. And then on the side, I love all the creatures. I just want all the creatures. So for example, the cholima, the winged horses, I just want a whole stable full of them. I want, in the third book, you'll meet a pulge, which literally pul is fire in Korean, and ke is dog, the fire dog. They're essentially the dogs of the god realm, except they're literally on fire. And so I would love some of those. Arum, who's the bird woman, who's part woman, part bird. I would just love. She's incredibly loyal, loyal to the bone. She would die for her human, and that kind of loyal sidekick character would be amazing. I mean, the list goes on. There was actually a character, or a creature, I should say, that didn't make it into the books that I really wanted to include. It's called a pulgasari. Pulgasari in Korean means two things. It means a starfish, which is not the vision I was meaning, and the other is this mythical creature that kind of looks like a bear, but with the snout of an elephant, and it cannot be killed. And it depends on which story, which version of the story, but often it like eats metal. And I think a lot of the stories seem to stem from the wartime, where people would create this creature, this unkillable creature that would come and eat all the metal weapons to keep people safe. There was a creature I never managed to get into this story, but yeah, the pulgasari is another one I would love. There's so many. So many.
Will there be creatures in the new trilogy? Like, are you going to use...
There will be creatures. There will be creatures for sure. But what type of creatures will be yet to be seen.
Okay. Okay. We have a few more questions. Let's see. Were there any scenes that turned out I love this question. Were there any scenes that turned out very different than you'd initially imagined them? Because I know you're a plotter, and I feel like a plotter gets so frustrated. I'm like, but that plot is not working. So I think Melissa asked that question.
Hi, Melissa. Thank you for the question. Yes, and I wish I could remember all of the fun things to tell you, but as is the common theme today, I don't remember anything. But I do know in the last Fallen Realm, there is a scene with this pulge I mentioned before, the fire dog. And in the scene where this fire dog features, slight spoiler, but it's not a big deal. The current scene that is in the book is essentially designed to be a little bit like a dog agility show vibe. But in previous iterations, it has been many a thing. Okay, so in one variation, it was like a weird cooking show inspired thing. Don't ask me how that relates to a fire dog. And in another one, it was like an ice skating related thing. In another version, it was like, what do you call, like wrestling. And then the other version of it was creating a rope, like a rope character where you have to like build a sculpture out of ropes or something. I went through lots of weird iterations trying to make that scene work. But it probably gives you a sense of how many random scenes in my book went through so many iterations. So one thing I'll mention is writers are very different in this. Some writers just have their vision and they really want to stick with their vision. Whereas I am one of those people that I love having people's input and feedback. Doesn't mean I'll necessarily take it all, but I love it because it kickstarts my own creativity and imagination. So sometimes when I'm just by myself trying to come up with a scene and trying to make it more effective and compelling, I'm just stuck. But when somebody gives me a suggestion or points out, oh, is this what you intended? Or could this be done in a different way? It just sparks something and my brain goes wild. And so I love having that feedback. But anyway, that was the fire dog scene. The pulge scene was probably one that has changed a lot.
No, I love that. I also love to have people into my process as well. It really does, because my brain gets stuck. We are very similar. I'm super forgetful and I have to write everything down. And so, yeah. I think we have time for one more question, then we can do our giveaways. And just to be clear for the giveaways, what we're going to do, I think, is just randomly pick 4 numbers, Gracie, and we'll just go down the audience roster. And if we call your number, you are a winner. So just make sure you... I'm not sure.
I hear a cat.
My cat, I have an outdoor cat and she's asking to go outside. But anyway, okay, so last question. Was there any person, god or goddess, being, or story from Korean mythology that you wanted to include in the last, I know we sort of covered the creature, but a being or something that you wanted to include in Last Fallen Stars trilogy but weren't able to, just like in the entire trilogy, not necessarily this book?
Yeah. So there's one I really wanted to feature that I did end up featuring, but just as like a side comment because I just didn't know how to include them. But there is an old Korean ancient god of earthenware pots. And it seems odd, right? Like, why is there a god of earthenware pots? But keep in mind, in Korea, in the winters before they had fridges and stuff, which was not that long ago, my dad's generation, for example, didn't have fridges for ages. They would have these earthenware pots, and that's where they would ferment a lot of their chili paste, soybean paste, a lot of their kimchi. They would put in these big, beautiful earthenware pots that would be often buried or just let to ferment outside in the weather. And so this idea that there is this god of earthenware pots feels so Korean to me, and I just love it. Just don't really know how to include them in these stories, but they are mentioned. I think in the first or second book, possibly. But yeah, that would be my pick.
Well, hey, we will hold out hope that there's a way to sneak it in in your with that, why don't we, first of all, thank you so much. Just thank you for all your answers are just delightful. This has been so much fun. But can you tell us a little bit about how the giveaway is going to work, just so everybody kind of understands? You want to show the books again?
Yeah. Okay. So I apologize in advance because I've never done this before and I'm not sure the best way, but here we go. The Cursed Carnival. These are 4 paperbacks that I have to give away. And these are an anthology of short stories from the Rick Riordan Presents authors. Not all of them, but up until I think I was the last one. So anyone published after me won't have been included. And also a short story from Rick Riordan himself. And it has a story in here, if you haven't read it, which is a short story, featuring Riley O, set a year before The Last Fallen Star. So almost like a mini short story prequel. So those are the 4 books. And I thought, okay, I'm looking here. We have 36 people registered, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's the number that's here right now, right? So how do maybe I can ask Nick. Nick, do we have a number that we can use? And if we do have a number, then what I thought I would ask you, Jess, is for you to just randomly pick 4 numbers, and then I'll count down that list, okay. And whoever
I have my 4 numbers. I picked them earlier.
Okay.
I think we can safely do 20.
Okay. Can you amend those numbers within the 20?
Yeah.
Okay.
1.
Okay.
9. I'm picking 4.
Wait. Okay. Yeah. Oh, wait. Okay. You give me the numbers, and then I'll go through the list. Okay. 1.
Okay. 1.
Yep.
9. 13. And 19.
Okay. I'm going to go through the list now, and I'm going to call out a name. And if you are here, can you please... Oh, no. I just realized this is wrong. This can't work because the numbers I have here aren't necessarily the people that are here. Nick, can you magically go through your list and go through those numbers and tell us the names? Yay. Okay. Number 1.
Number 1, we're going to give it to Andonia.
Oh,
Andonia! Oh, yay. Okay. Number 9.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We're going to give it to Serena.
Woo! Okay. Number 13.
We're going to give it to, I'm probably going to butcher the name, but Alania. ELLYANNAH.
Eliana! Yay! And then finally, number 19.
All right, let's see. Number 19 is Athena Ebright. Athena!
Okay, congratulations, and thank you for putting that in the chat there. So what I need you to do, if you are able, if you jump on, just so I don't want you to put your addresses on this chat. So
no, you don't do that.
Please don't do that. Yeah, please don't do that. So that's my website I put in the chat. There's a contact form in there. So if you just send me your full postal address, including postcode and country, in there with your name, then I'll make sure to have these sent to you. Okay, but please do that so I know where to send them to.
Yay, that was so generous. Thank you. I'm so excited.
Yay!
That is so very generous for you. I didn't even know this was happening until the green room was like, oh, giveaway. Okay, cool.
Let's make it work.
And you did. Gracie, congratulations on the tie-up to your trilogy. I can't wait to see what else you have in the future. Don't you just hate that? Like, great, I love this thing came out, but I want more. But that just goes to show people love your stuff so much. They just want it to never end.
Oh, thank you, Nick. It's been so much fun. I mean, thank you, Nick, and thank you, Mysterious Galaxy. Thank you, Jess. Jess, I mean, we mentioned before, I think, but Jess and I have been friends since the very beginning when we were first writing and trying to seek, an agent, trying to seek publication, and we've had so many parallels. We often refer to each other as like publishing twin, and so it's just been so amazing to be able to chat like this for the first time.
No, that's so bizarre. We talk all the time, but never in front of an audience. And just to note, Nick, I want to point out some before we go. Athena's not seeing the contact form.
Yeah, I'm gonna find
Is there an
it.
email address at Mysterious Galaxy that you could give them, Nick, and they could email? Or
so if they would like to email us, then they can absolutely do that. So everyone, if you would like to, probably in the subject header, go, I'm the winner, Graci Kim event. Email mgbooks@missgalaxy.com. If you can't find the form, just go ahead and email mgbooks@missgalaxy.com, and we'll make sure that Graci will get that in one way, shape, or form.
And that's mystgalaxy.com.
Yeah, short for mysterious.
Got it.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Graci. I hope you have a wonderful cold season. It's like 90 degrees here, so.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. We're going into, is it winter here soon? I'm not even sure. I can't keep track of seasons even, so it's getting a little bit colder. Yeah, getting colder.
Just in case, Athena, if you missed it, JL was very kind and put our email address up there if you want to grab that and email us. And don't forget, everyone, you can still get your copies of The Last Fallen Realm and get the cool swag, book plate, signed bookmark, and, of course, the acrylic pin while supplies last. And we do have still copies of The Little Mermaid Against the Tide if you also like to get that for JL. Yes. We actually have a mermaid display, and that's prominent in the mermaid display.
I am planning to be in your store soon so I can sign them for you.
Yay!
Oh,
okay, everyone.
Yes.
You heard that.
You heard it here, folks.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much. I love you dearly. We'll talk soon.
Bye.
Thank you. Read your books.
Oh, wait. I need to take a screenshot. Oh, my goodness.
Oh, a screenshot. Okay.
Sorry. Okay, ready? Got it. Okay, thank you.
Bye, everyone. Have a good day.
Bye.